Hi there, welcome back. So in the last video, we understood what is a VNet integration feature in the web apps and how it can connect to your resources in a VNet. In this video, we are going to cover the troubleshooting steps we need to follow when we face connectivity issues with the Azure resource from the VNet integration. So in this one, we are going to cover any issues we might face while we are connecting to any resource which lives inside the VNet, be a VM or a PaaS service or a storage account, etc. It could be anything which is inside your VNet and you want your app connect privately through your VNet. We will explore a variety of troubleshooting techniques from basic connectivity checks to advanced networking diagnostic, ensuring your web applications maintain seamless communication with the other Azure resources. So the connection issues, we need to check the following things. First thing will be a DNS configuration. We need to ensure the proper DNS setup within your VNet or directly in the web app is configured. This is crucial for the hostname resolution and overall connectivity. So there are two ways where we can configure the DNS servers through where our app will try to resolve the DNS entries. So number one, we can configure it through the VNet settings. We have a DNS section there. I'll show you that in a bit. And the second being we can configure that on an app itself. Next is we custom DNS servers. We need to verify that the host entries for the target resources which we are trying to access are configured correctly to avoid any resolution issues. The next we need to check the VNet integration is successfully done with your web app. And the last being resource access to ensure that the web app has required permissions to access Azure resources. It needs to communicate within the VNet. So to cover this slide, I'll move to Azure portal and see this configuration in detail. So whenever we are trying to troubleshoot this issue, there are some pre-steps which we need to follow. So as I told earlier, there are two ways through which we can configure the DNS server, one in the VNet itself and in the app directly as well. So if I go to the VNet, you'll see under VNet there is a DNS server section in here. And if you're using the default Azure provided, it will automatically route to the Azure DNS server. And if you're using an own custom DNS server, you need to make sure your entries are made in the DNS with the resource you're trying to access. Next, if we go to the app, we have a section here of networking. Also, while we are doing the troubleshooting, we need to check if the VNet integration is done successfully. So in this case, you can see it's connected to the VNet Linux VM VNet and the web app subnet. Also, you can see the section here for outbound DNS. If I click on this, it's saying it's inherited from the VNet from here. So that means from here it's inheriting those entries. And if you want to directly configure the custom DNS servers, you can just manually type the entries here. Like this is a Azure DNS server, you can just put up, or it could be your own domain controllers which you want to use. You can just add those entries and click on save. So then whenever it's trying to access any resource from this web app, it's going to automatically go to these DNS servers to try and resolve the host. Now let's go back to the slide. So firstly, we are going to check the troubleshooting steps we need to follow for the Linux app service plan and a web app. Firstly, we need to verify the VNet integration is done successfully. If there is no issues or any error messages you are seeing there, we need to check the assigned private IP address. That we can check by this command by going to the console section of the web app. This private IP will be assigned from your integrated subnet. And the third step we need to follow would be the using the DNS. We need to use the test DNS functionality to check the resources which we are trying to access can be properly resolved by your DNS server. And lastly, we can use the test connectivity by using the curl command. So this will check if you are able to reach your resources with the hostname or the IP address and the port. So let's follow these steps for the Linux web app I have in my environment. This is a Linux operating system, a web app. And if I go to the networking section, firstly, I'll check the net integration is done. So you can see I do not see any error message or any failed deployments. Next, I'll proceed to check the private IP address of my web app. For this, I can go to advanced tool. Herein you can go to the SSH section. I'll copy the command from here to check my IP. So you can see it has given me the private IP address of my web app, which is 10.0.1.62, which will be from the subnet I have dedicated for my integration, which is from this subnet. So I have my source IP address. So next thing I will check the DNS. That I will check by using my hostname of my VM to check it can resolve to the IP address. At my VM side, currently I'm using a Linux VM. And to resolve the DNS entries, I'm currently using a private DNS zone, which is mapped to my virtual machine. So you can see I have a zone here with linuxvm.com in which there is an entry made for the Linux VM hostname with the private IP address of 10.004 as the same that of VM. So this is the hostname and this will be the DNS zone. And let's check if the web app is correctly resolving to the IP address through the hostname. The command I'll use is the nslookup hostname will run in this Linux web app. So I'll copy the entire hostname of my VM, and I'll use the nslookup command and paste the values. Alright, so you can see it's going to the server address 127.00.1. So it is going to locally through the web app with the DNS servers of 127.00.11, and it's getting resolved by my hostname with the correct IP address 10.0.0.4, which is the private IP. So my DNS is working correctly. Also, I've set up the Apache in this VM. I'm going to access this through with my web app. Third step is working fine. Next, I'll go to connectivity and I'll use the curl command to check if it's getting connected via my hostname and the port as well. Confirm the access. I'll use the curl command -v, and first I'll use the hostname. So you can see it's going to port 80 and it's connected. So it is connected successfully and it's getting me the file as well from the server. So I'll next check the with my IP address as well. So also it can connect directly with the IP address as well. Also I can use the port combination with the 80 or 22. You can see connected, right? My web app here is successfully connected to the destination privately. So this is how you can check for the Linux web app. Also, there are some few things you need to consider when you're doing the connection and it's failing. You can go to the NSG of the where your VM is and you can see resource networking. Like in this case, I'll go to the VM network settings and I will check the network security group. In inbound rules, see my VM allows connectivity from the web app with the desired port number. And also you can go to your web app and under networking you can go to the NSG to see it allows outbound connectivity to the VM. If you have seen that the NSGs are correct and your DNS and the curl command is working fine, you can go to the firewall. As we are using the virtual appliance or the firewall, in the middle you can check your firewall if it's blocking the connection from there. These steps can help you in setting up your connectivity with the desired destination resource successfully. Proceeding next with the Windows web app. So the steps are similar with the we need to verify with the VNet integration. We need to check the assigned private IP first. So this private IP can help you in when you check the private IP of your web apps, it will help you in checking the source address from the firewall devices to see if it's getting blocked from the virtual appliances or the firewall. Next, we'll use that to test the DNS functionality. We are going to use the nameresolver.exe, and finally, we are going to check the TCP connectivity is successful to the destination resource. So in this case, I do not have the web app. I'll create a app service plan for Windows and a new web app. This I will deploy in the Windows VNet. I'll use a basic tier. I'll go to next review and create. So it's created. I'll create a web app now. For that, I will search for web app. I'll click on create. I'll use a test window app. I'll use the region Central India. I'll use the Windows plan I just created, App Service Plan Windows, and I'll go to next deployment. I'll not change anything here. For networking, I'll leave everything as it is. I'll create a dedicated subnet. I'll use no and the tags. Next review and create, and then create. So I'll create a dedicated subnet for my Windows App Service. I'll go to subnet. I'll add a subnet and I'm going to use a /26 subnet and a Windows subnet name. I'll use the NSG same as that of Linux VM NSG as it allows all the connections. I'll click on add. Okay, my app is deployed. I'll go to my app. So it's still getting deployed. Meanwhile, I'll go to networking. I'll go to VNet integration. I'll add virtual network integration. I'll use a Windows VM VNet and the subnet I just created, Windows subnet, and connect. Alright, so it's connected to the VNet. I'll head back and I'll see if my app is deployed. Alright, so I'll see if I'm able to access it publicly. So it's working fine. Next, I'll follow the steps I mentioned here. So we have verified that the app is working fine. The VNet is integrated successfully. Next, we are going to check the private IP address of the app. These steps can help you in getting the private IP address of your web app, which can help you in troubleshooting further. So in this, I can go to environment. I'll see a section here of private IP, or you can just search. I can see the private IP address from the variable website private IP, which is the 10.0.1.62. Next, I'll head over to the debug console and a PowerShell. So I'm going to use the command first, which will be the nameresolver.exe and then the hostname. I'll paste the same value here. So you can see here it is not able to resolve IP address of my Linux server, and that is because it lives inside the different VNet. Linux web app was able to connect successfully to the Linux VM because both resources lived inside the same VNet, and inside the same VNet the traffic is routed internally. But in this case the Windows web app lives inside a different VNet and the destination my Linux VM lives inside the different VNet. Now to set up this connectivity, I'll first go to my private DNS zone. I'll add a VNet link. I'll give the name first. So it is successfully connected. Now I'll again go back to the console and I'll check the connection again. So you can see now it is able to resolve to the correctly to the my IP address of my Linux VM. In the Linux side, you can see here when I'm doing the nslookup, it is directly going internally from 127 DNS server to the VM, and it's not using the Azure DNS server to resolve the IP because it lives inside the same VNet, both resources. And when I go to the Windows, it goes to the Azure DNS server. This is a DNS server used by the Azure to resolve the addresses. So in this case, when I tried to access my Linux VM, it went to the Azure DNS server and then got the private IP address of my Linux VM from the private DNS zone. Now DNS is also working fine. Now I'll check the connectivity from the app. For that, I'll copy the next command to check the connectivity, which is a TCP ping. I'll use the command and I can use the host name. So it's not able to connect to the my Linux VM, though it's able to DNS resolve my IP address, but it's not able to make a successful TCP connection. So I'll try one more time with my private IP address directly instead of hostname. So you can see it's not able to work with the private IP address as well. Now I will go to my two VNet, which is a Windows VNet and a Linux VNet. So I'll go to my Windows VNet and I'll go to the pairing. I can see my pairing is not done, and that is why it's not able to connect to my Linux VM, which lives inside a Linux VM VNet. So I'll click on add. I'll give a name Windows to Linux VNet. So we hit a roadblock because both the VNet have the same CIDR and the VNet pairing cannot be done which has the same CIDR. So let me see what I can do. Right, so what I've done now is I've created a new VNet, disconnected the web app with the previous VNet, and I'm going to integrate with the new one because both the VNet had the same CIDR and it cannot be paired. So I'll use the new VNet which I just created, which is a window VNet, and I'll create a subnet first. App subnet, and I'm going to use at slash 26 and the NSG Linux VM NSG and add. So let's VNet integrate my Windows app with the new VNet. I'm going to use the new VNet and the subnet app subnet and connect. So I'll wait until this is connected successfully and I'll check the private IP address of my web app first. It's connected. Now I'll go to my advanced tools and then go head over to environment, search for the private IP. So now you can see I have a private IP of my web app, which is a 10.0.17.62. Next, I'll proceed with the debug console PowerShell. So I'll again check the connectivity of my DNS is working fine or not. But this won't result in anything because I would have to connect my newly created VNet with the private DNS zone. Right, non-existent domain. So I'll again head over to my DNS. I'll go to VNet link, click on add. I'll use the new VNet and I'll create. Let's wait for a few seconds and then let's check the connectivity again. So it's connected. Now I will head over to the console and check the connectivity again. Let's just give it a few seconds. So you can see it can resolve to my private IP address of my Linux VM correctly. I'll check the connection again if it's able to connect. For that I will use the tcpping command. And it's getting failed because both my destination is the VM which is in the different VNet and my source is in the different VNet. Pair the both VNet together, check if it's able to connect successfully. Then I'll head over to my source VNet. I'll add window to Linux. I'll choose my destination VNet. Next I'll allow both files. And I'll click on add. So let's wait until this VNet pairing is done and then we'll check the connection. Alright, this pairing is done successfully and now let's head over back. So I'll use the command tcpping.exe. After the VNet pairing is done, it should able to reach the destination. I'll use first with the hostname. So there is a typo, I'll correct that. So you can see it's able to reach with the hostname with the 80 port. I'll use the port 2022 like this. And it's also connected. Next I'll check the connection from the IP address directly, port 80 first. So you can see it's connected now with the private IP as well. So the things which we covered here, the issues which we faced during this setup, first I had to add to my private DNS zone my VNet through which I was initiating the web app connection, and also the destination resource which we are trying to access needs to be added to the private DNS zone. With this we were able to DNS resolve correctly. And the next step which we did to successfully make a connection was doing the pairing between the source and the destination. The source was the Windows VNet and the destination was the Linux VNet. So after doing the pairing, the connection was also able to reach to the destination successfully. Next we'll cover some tools which we can use to find issues in the NSG or the DNS. So we can use a network troubleshooter option available in our web app to troubleshoot the connection more. We can use it to connection issues and the configuration and the deletion issues. Head over to the network troubleshooter to check more this in detail. Alright, so I'll go to my web app and there I'll go to the diagnose and solve problem. So I can use this option here to troubleshoot a lot of categories like availability and performance, configuration, management, SSL domain, all of these we can check from here. At the bottom you have a popular troubleshooting tools which is a network troubleshooter. Let's click on that one. So in here we can choose the connection issues if you are having some issues here. Right now it's facing some issues, but this will provide you some detailed analysis for the connectivity issues your app might be facing, or we can use the configuration issues. We can provide the Windows VNet. For me, it showing some issues, but at your side, you will be able to see some details and detailed analysis. Right now, I don't have configured anything on my web app, so it's mostly errors. But at your side, if app is working fine and you have some code deployed, you will be able to see some breakdown steps here if you are facing some issues. In the left side, you can see the proactive CPU monitoring for your web app. You can also use the crash monitoring. All these tools are available here to actively troubleshoot networking issue in detail. Next we have is the common pitfalls and solution. Misconfigured DNS, you will not be able to resolve the host name. Solve it, you need to verify your DNS server settings in VNet and the web app. Pitfall could be the NSG blocking your outbound traffic, and the symptom will be the connection timeout. To fix this, you need to review and adjust your NSG rules. Also, the next thing we need to make sure is the incorrect subnet configuration. We need to allocate a slash 26, 27 or 28 subnet for your web app so that it can function properly. You need to check your firewall with the source IP address of your app to troubleshoot any firewall blocking the outbound traffic initiating from your app. So these are all the steps you can take to troubleshoot the VNet integration feature of the web app. And if you're not able to access any resource privately, the steps mentioned here in the video, if you're following them, there is a maximum chance you will be able to fix the issue and connect to your resource. That will be all for this video. Thank you everyone.